SuperCoach. The long wait is over. That's right. Our double week round 16 of NBA Supercoach is done. We're here to set you up for week 17. This is Jim Does SuperCoach. I'm your mate Jimmy from NBA Straya. And I'll tell you what a double week it was. You had the All-Star game in the middle. You had a whole bunch of different scandals. You had a whole bunch of teams playing 5 games. Basically, you had to spend 2 weeks avoiding landmines of players just not playing, getting injured, getting sick, sitting out for personal reasons, or just trying to punch on with the entire Detroit Pistons. Good job, Miles Bridges, you dummy. Anyway, how did you go in the double week round 16? I ended up with 1353, so probably just a little bit below what I was hoping for. Still landed in the top 5% with that score, but my overall ranking dropped 36 spots to 460th overall. So look, there was a couple of interesting points. Like if you look at a bunch of the top teams this week, a lot of them sort of had Karl Anthony Towns in there as well with the 151 that he scored. Kawhi Leonard was a popular choice with the 144 as well. I didn't have those guys, and like Amen Thompson and LP Şengün didn't quite deliver. Ant-Man didn't quite go off to the degree I was hoping. Those sorts of guys. But obviously my big bugbear this week was, if you cast your mind back 2 weeks, my third trade heading into that double round was going to be basically a flip up between Mikal Bridges and Miles Bridges. I went with Miles Bridges, and almost as soon as I pressed trade in, he was punching on with the Detroit Pistons, scored 3 points, and was suspended for the next 2 weeks. Amazing work by me. So, it didn't really cost me too much. I think Mikal Bridges basically got into the 90s, and it's like, that's fine. But really, everybody out there who had a really good week is sort of a combination of having Donovan Mitchell, Kawhi Leonard, Karl Anthony Towns, as well as obviously Cade Cunningham ripping off 160, stuff like that. So for the folks who weren't in my team this week, you could definitely see the big PODs that people had leaned on. They were a little bit different to mine. So Cade versus Ant-Man, for instance, that's like a pretty big difference of 160 that Cade had versus the 114 or whatever Ant-Man finished on. So bit of a rough one, kind of, but look, we'll persevere. She'll be right, surely. But what do we do when we start Jim Does SuperCoach? We go news, I guess. But first off, a word of caution. Remember, always proceed with caution. Check how many games your players have. Make sure you're getting your trades in. And remember, the rolling lockout is way sooner than you think. So get on top of it right now. Some quick news bits. You've got the Harden-Donovan Mitchell tandem in Cleveland at the moment, which is doing very, very well. 132 for Harden, 131 for Mitchell in this last round. We also had Benny Mathurin roll into the LA Clippers and just start putting up huge numbers, which is pretty cool. I think he ended up with 120 this week. Not bad, Benny M. Not bad at all. Outside of that, though, the sort of big news is Houston, bit of a weird tailspin that they've gone into. The Kevin Durant burner scandal is pretty funny. Josh Giddey is back, however, which is kind of nice. Sort of a bit of a weird sort of spot, though, because, and this is kind of the biggest part of the last remaining 7 weeks of SuperCoach, NBA SuperCoach, is going to be avoiding the pitfalls of tanking. Because with basically a third of the NBA going, right, we've hit the All-Star break, we're not going to win the title. We've got an awesome draft ahead of us. So maybe we'll, a couple of our players might need a bit of off-season surgery that they could just have now. And so folks are getting sat. They're being sent off for surgery. It's a bit fraught, I'll tell you. So just remember, when we talk about teams like even the Chicago Bulls, Josh Giddey is back for the minute. Who knows how long they'll actually sort of have him going out there trying to carve people up. Because, look, with selective sitting, a bit of load management, who knows what could happen. But just keep that in the front of your thinking. So when we talk about the schedule later on and which teams are on, the 4-game weeks for this week, next week, etc., that's got to be maybe a bit of a deciding factor as well. Just saying. But the other one is obviously going to be injuries. Big injury news over the last 2 weeks since we last had an NBA Straya Does SuperCoach. Because Joel Embiid, I hope you didn't fall for it. Remember, just before the All-Star break, we did say on this show, you can't trust Joel Embiid to play his full complement of games. And boy, did he not play that full complement, did he? It was, Jim, it wasn't a full complement at all. Because Joel Embiid sort of came back, had his entire sort of, nice little run there pre-All-Star break, and then just didn't play over the last 2 weeks. He's got a bit of a sore shin after his sore knee. So here we are. It's a bit of a rough one, right? So Embiid, owned by 3.7% of coaches, he had a couple of awesome games where he ripped off in week 15. He had 22, 46, and 33 in his final 3 games, and then just didn't play again. So bit of a rough one, I'll tell you. Cooper Flagg scored 18 points, and then his ankle injury hurt a lot of coaches, missed 3 games. Denny Avdia left today's game with another lower back injury, which is not great because they will be probably pretty conservative with their treatment of that. Just saying. Devin Booker is out for at least a week. Dylan Brooks has broken his hand. He's out for an extended time. Steph Curry is still out with runner's knee. SGA is still out. The update was about, 4 or 5 days ago that he'll be reevaluated in a week. So later this week, we'll probably know more about SGA. But in the meantime, it means he'll probably miss another 1 or 2 games. Scotty Barnes missed a game this week with personal reasons. Same with Pascal Siakam. There's just a lot of, especially around the All-Star break, it was very clear that teams were like, all right, you can have a bit of a, RDO. Just go sit down, go hang out, go sit on the couch, just chill out. So here we are, heading into this sort of next week 17 and essentially the stretch run of NBA Supercoach. And the biggest question will remain, can we avoid injuries and load management? That's so much of what we're going to do down the stretch here. And it's going to be very, very tough. I mean, trying to get a team, the full complement of 4 game players is really, really hard at the best of times. But, I mean, we're still going to give it a crack, aren't we? Yeah, Jim, we are. You're damn straight. So, after this week, I mean, the best pods this week, if you're out there, you're rolling out Desmond Bane, well played, because some of the best performers this week, we had the 200 from Jokic was incredible, capped off by an amazing game today against the Warriors despite the Nuggets losing. Wemby 162, Cade 160, Desmond Bane 157, 151 for Karl Anthony Towns, and Donovan Clingan. He was very, very, very good late. 144 for Kawhi. Jarrett Allen had 142. So did Kevin Porter Jr. Just the Bucks and KPJ, it is such an up and down just approach to everything. It'll make your head spin. Harden with the 132. His teammate Donnie Mitchell 131. Maxey still managed 130. Jalen Johnson 127 because he played all of his games, which is very nice. Connie Nips, he managed 123, 122 for Jamal Murray. Had a really decent last few minutes of their game today, but they didn't win it, so a bit of a tough one. Brunson also 122. The Benny Mathurin 120 experience, I mentioned that earlier. Chet 116, 114 for Ant-Man, and 109 for Zion. There's your top 20 scorers. So the best pods, I think, out of all of this week, like if you sort of look at Benny Mathurin, 2.7% owned, ripped off the 120. We knew that he'd get a lot more exposure and a lot more opportunity for a Clippers team that's in desperate need of scoring and basically younger athletic dudes, which they just don't have. So without Garland returning yet, Benny Mathurin's just been going off his head, which is very, very cool. Con Knipple, and with the Hornets suspensions, obviously Miles Bridges going out, it meant a lot more time for Con Knipple. Moussa Diabate as well. Basically, a few more minutes floating around. LaMelo went off today. But KPJ, pretty good pod. He's in 6.5% of teams, though. 0.4% of teams have Jarrett Allen. This is the problem with Supercoach sometimes, though. With the 2 center positions, obviously, like Jokic, Wemby, that sort of combination, it's going to be hard to get someone like Donovan Clingan with his 0.8% of ownership as well. He's at 14.6 mil. And you feel like Portland is going to keep playing through him. I am fascinated by his ceiling, I guess, throughout the back half of this Supercoach season from now on. But with that C next to his name, it makes it really hard to move off Jokic or Wemby, right? Jokic does have the 3 games this week. I think he's only got the 3 games next week as well. But Jokic is also so good, you can probably carry him with the 3 games, because I think that's what my plan is to do. Anyway, other pods, Bane, 0.7%, the 157. He is a great little pod because with Franz Wagner, he's out for a little bit longer as well with his ankle injury. So with Paolo not quite hitting an efficient array of scoring, right? So Paolo's biggest problem, really, it feels like a lot this year, is like consistently being efficient. Desmond Bane will just consistently go off his head and drop a 157 on you like he did this week. But it does mean that his role is just score some more, and you have the eternal green light. So I don't mind Desmond Bane if you're going to jump on him this week at 13.1 mil. But anyway, the biggest busts per ownership sort of stuff that we usually hit on. I mean, Cooper Flagg getting the 18 before getting hurt obviously is a tough one. How about Miles Bridges and his 3 points before getting into a fight and getting kicked out and then suspended? That's just amazing. Ace Bailey had 61. Luka had 61 as well. 28.2% of coaches had Luka. This was another one where it's like coming back from the injury, how much do you trust him? If you think about, Austin Reeves, sort of same position where both those Lakers sort of guards just have these moments where you're like, ooh, I think we're onto a bit of a roll here, and then they'll just completely drop off a cliff. And it's a bit of a frustrating one, right? So Reeves has 87 this round. 7.8% owned. Just, I don't know. Can you trust him? But 61 for Luka. It was always going to kind of be like that with that injury and then sort of, missing a bit of time around All-Star. But anyway. Other sort of busts, who else did we have? We had, 77 for Buzelis. Jaylen Brown only managed 87, despite a couple of good games in there. Giannis is obviously still out injured for the minute. Calamari Boyles only managed 33. Do love Calamari Boyles. 40 for Josh Giddey coming back from his injury. 40 for Larry Markkinen, who just good luck trying to decide if he's going to play or not. Because again, this is the tanking, from the Utah Jazz. It's a soft J, the Yaz. They are just going to go, today he might play. I can't trust that. 74 for Derek Queen. Yeah, 52 for Scotty Barnes. As I mentioned, he missed a game for personal reasons as well. Cedric Coward only managed 7, -1 for Xavier Tillman. Yeesh, in 6.9% of teams. Nikola Topic came back, which is pretty cool. He scored 11, but the 5 for Tyrese Proctor. Yeah, a few rough ones in there. But we do have a few cash cows floating around. We'll get to that in a second. So, what are we doing for Week 17, folks? What are we going to do? Well, we're going to check the schedule. That's what we always do. Who has the max 4 games in Week 17? We've got 14 teams. So it's a bit of a wide open week. But the way I like to approach this is also figure out who has 4 games in Week 18 and try to middle this and not have to worry about trading them out next week, etc. With that said, there's a couple of interesting schedule quirks, I guess, where you sort of look at the teams that have the maximum 8 games over these next 2 rounds. Boston, Dallas, Detroit, Houston, the Lakers, Milwaukee, New Orleans, and San Antonio. Couple of good ones in there, right? So Boston, you'd be targeting the likes of Jaylen Brown, perhaps even Peyton Pritchard. He's moved back to the bench, has opened up his scoring again. Dallas is a tricky one because Najee Marshall is very tempting. Cooper Flagg out. Who knows when he's going to come back from his the ankle, mid-foot strain, etc. Bit of a tough one with Dallas just in terms of who's going to be playing, who's going to be scoring their Supercoach points. It's a bit of a stay away. Detroit. This is a blaring siren of, yes, mate. Cade Cunningham, hello. Jalen Duren, perhaps. Orsar Thompson even, maybe. Houston, with the 8 games over the next 2 rounds. Love this for my Amen Thompson, LP Şengün. That's why I kept them in my team. They're still there, ready to go. But because of all the weirdness surrounding that team, I feel far less confident. The Lakers, that's an obvious big question about, do you want to bring in Luka this week? He had a really rough game against Boston. And I feel like the Reeves, Luka, LeBron combo, it never has felt like it's reached its ceiling all season, right? Like it's a really strange defense optional approach that they're going with. But Luka, look, coming back from a hamstring, I never trust that. So I'm probably just going to be cautious on Luka this week and probably avoid him. Milwaukee, that's KPJ. It's maybe Bobby Portis. Otherwise, it's a bit rough around the edges. New Orleans is a pretty interesting one because they're just going to keep playing. They don't have anything to tank for. They'll keep playing their guys. Sadiq Bey is a really interesting one for me. Same with, Zion. His lack of rebounding just hurts me when it comes to Supercoach, so I can't really get into the Zion stakes because 109 this week, he dropped 30K. With the lack of rebounding, I can't really get into that business. And San Antonio, that's obviously Wemby. A lot of us have still got Dylan Harper sitting around on the bench. He's looking very, very solid. Not making money hand over fist, though, so it's kind of like a bit of how you going. So the teams that have the 4 games this week are Boston, Brooklyn, Cleveland, Dallas, Detroit, Houston, the Lakers, Memphis, Milwaukee, New Orleans, OKC, Portland, Sacramento, and San Antonio. Boston's an interesting one, obviously. Jaylen Brown, though. I'm sort of resisting going back to the Jaylen Brown well because as good and as consistent as he has been, the Supercoach scoring quite hasn't taken off to the degree that you'd like it to. Brooklyn, they're rookies. It's absolutely rookie roulette with the Nets, right? Michael Porter Jr. as well. You'd like to be able to lock and load him, but just in terms of the tanking and the load management, they're probably going to be pretty cautious with him as well. We've already seen them sort of sitting him out for a little bit. Cleveland, this is probably the decision a lot of folks are going to make this week. If they've already got Donovan Mitchell in, great job. I'm definitely looking at James Harden this week. It hurts my brain to say it again, but here we are. He's been very, very, very good next to Donovan Mitchell. He's at a fairly solid price point as well, just saying. So that's what? Cleveland, Dallas, I mentioned like Najee and co. Detroit, it's obviously Cade and maybe Jalen Duran. Houston, Amen, LP. Kevin Durant is still being very, very, very consistent. 106 this week. He dropped 370K, owned by 10% of super coaches. Lakers, yeah, it's the Luka, Austin Reeves, LeBron triumvirate, isn't it? Memphis, they're rookies. GG Jackson, Cedric Coward. Well, yeah, GG Jackson's not a rookie, but they're young folks, right? That's what it's all about. GG Jackson, Cedric Coward, Jalen Wells. They're young dudes. They're all solid, but the consistency is maybe not quite there. New Orleans, actually Milwaukee. Again, we already mentioned KPJ and Bobby Portis. New Orleans, yeah, Sadiq Bey. Jeremiah Zero Fears is just too inconsistent as well. That's just a mess of a team. OKC, this is where it gets interesting. Isaiah Joe would be a very fun 1-week rental, I reckon. Portland, this is the last sort of trade for me this week as well. Tumani Kamara or Jeremy Grant. Just saying, with Denny Avdia possibly out for at least maybe a game or two. Could their roles expand? Maybe. Sacramento, Maxime Reno. He's still on my team, on my bench. I love him. He's crushing it because they've sat Domantas Sabonis for the rest of the season. DeAndre Hunter's gone. So there's a lot of just dudes out there going, looks like I'm going to get some run, which is pretty funny for Sacramento. But they're kind of still resting. Like, they're not really playing a giant amount of Russell Westbrook. DeMar DeRozan, sort of the same sort of thing, right? So their veterans are playing a bit. Keegan Murray, just a little. He's an interesting one, but he's still priced at 10.3 mil. I'd love to see his price drop a little bit before he just skyrockets and they play him down the stretch as much as they can. We'll see what happens. Westbrook only managed 13 points last week. Yeah, it's just a bit of a mess there in Sacramento. And the Spurs, as I mentioned, Stephon Castle, still waiting for him to take that one huge big Supercoach jump. We jumped on earlier this season, not quite there, but Wemby's still your guy. Harper's still solid. Keldon Johnson's still another one as well, but I think they'll keep sharing it. Wemby's the focal point. So, obviously, with those 14 teams playing 4 games this week, I'm much more inclined to like target the teams that are playing 4 games the following week as well. And of course, now that I've said that, I have this sneaking suspicion that 2 of the players that I trade in will be on 4 games this week, and then I'll have to trade them again next week. But I do have, 21 trades left. So I've got like 21, 22, whatever it is. So I've got plenty in the bank to, run us down to the wire here. So who are we avoiding this week, though? Phoenix and the Clippers have only got 2 games. And then Atlanta and Cleveland have only got 2 games in week 18. So I'll be sort of looking at with the idea of maybe bringing in Harden this week. Jalen Johnson only has the 3 games this week as well, and he might be gone the week after. So I think he's probably going to be one of the most traded out players this week. But with 3 games this week for Jalen Johnson, we've seen him be very, very able to put up huge numbers as well. In the same kind of way that like Giannis, Jokic, the really top end primo Supercoach guns have been able to do, right? Is like if they have that one less game, it might not matter if you carry them for a week or 2, but yeah, I wouldn't feel too bad if you trade him out because he's only got the 3 and then the 2 the week after. So 5 games is a lot less than 8, just saying. Anyway, so with all this in mind, with all of that schedule talk, who are we looking at? Are we looking at some cash cows? Do we need that much cash generation? We always need cash, Jim. Yeah, you're right. So some interesting break-evens at the moment. A bunch of these Wizards kids, because this is another team that's just playing the kids. They're sitting everybody. Kadari Richmond, Alondaze Williams, Tristan Vukcevic, Anthony Gill, all with tiny break-evens. Can you trust their roles? Who knows? Anthony Gill scored 72 last week. Kadari Richmond had 53 out of nowhere. 71 for Alondaze Williams as well. You're going to make a bit of cash. I don't know how much they're going to score. It doesn't feel like you can play them on court, but they might be able to help you out just a little bit. Just saying. Kobe Brown's another interesting one from Indy. He had 74 last week. He's got a break even to minus 18. Paul Reed, basketball Paul, with Big Beef Stew out there in Detroit, suspended. He's probably got a few more decent weeks in him. Or at least one more week. He's already priced at 7.7 mil, but his break even is 1. He should smash that. Ben Shepherd's at back as well for the Pacers. He's got a minus 11 break even, so he should be putting up pretty decent numbers. And Ousmane Deng, if you do need to just add a dude to the rotation on your bench at 3.9 mil, he scored 65 last week, break even to minus 5. The Bucks will keep playing him, and off they go. Outside of this, there's still a few names like Rob Dillingham. He's got a break even to 2. He's priced at 3.8 mil. Just the guard rotation in Chicago with a couple of dudes going down here or there, but it's very, very hard. And the really annoying one is Benny Mathurin. He's got a break even of 4, ripped off 120 last week, but only plays the 2 games this week. So definitely want to keep an eye on for this week. The break even of 4, he's obviously going to smash that. He'll still rise up in price, but he's not going to really put up a big score if you bring him into your team right now. So bit of a tricky one. Gui Santos is another one, 7.6 mil, break even of 5. Yakin Shunas has got a break even of 5 as well, but they're both got 3 games this week. So the Wizards are an interesting one because they're young dudes. They've got 3 games, super tiny break evens, but sort of just depends on how. Sharif Cooper was the other one as well, 62, break even to minus 4. They've just got dudes coming out of the wazoo. But I guess in terms of like your actual cash cows, it gets a little bit thin on right now. And with the 3 trades each week, I think we should all be trying to make sure that on-court production is prioritized because the cash generation, we should all basically be sitting around a full primo squad on-court and essentially being able to switch out dudes week on week to try to maximize the 4-game week. So that's hopefully where we're at week 17. But my favorite trade targets for this week, if I'm looking at in terms of the schedule and some of like the top-notch players, like Harden is a fascinating one, obviously, for the simple idea that he and this sort of schedule that they've got, he's looked very, very good next to Donovan Mitchell. He's priced at 15.7, which feels pretty good. He plays the Knicks, the Bucks, the Pistons, and then Brooklyn again. He dropped the 31 on Brooklyn the other day. He had a really good game against Denver as well the other day for Cleveland, but still. A couple of tough ones against Detroit. But I still kind of don't mind Harden's floor for the simple fact that his rebounding is still awesome and everything like that. Cade Cunningham's the other one I'm just, almost automatically bringing in for Ant-Man. 18 mil. The Pistons play the 8 games over the next 2 weeks. He comes in for me. And then the other one is, with the money I've got, it's probably a Tamani Kamara. Miles Bridges goes. But with 4 games for the Blazers this week, not the following week, but Kamara could still make a big chunk of cash. And I think he's also the sort of guy who every so often will just have a huge game. He dropped 35 on the Sixers, a 35 Supercoach score against the Sixers the other day. There was also a stretch in the middle of the season where he ripped off a 23, 26, 20, and 24, and then a 23, right? This is Denny is in and out a little bit. Tamani Kamara goes off. Might be worth rolling the dice. Or someone like Isaiah Joe filling in for SGA for another week. Maybe, just maybe, you don't mind him. But I don't know. With all these sort of guys out there, I would also be Jaylen Brown is the guy that I'm sort of just still eyeballing going, do we go back to the Jaylen Brown? Well, they've got the 8 games over the next 2 weeks. Boston are playing awesome. He looks really, really good. But the Supercoach scoring is being weirdly sort of depressed for Jaylen Brown. So I'm just sort of a little bit just wary of, bringing him back in. So 87 Jaylen Brown managed last round. But that was because they only played he played 3 games. He had 19, 41, and 27. And that's kind of the problem. There's a few too many of those 19s, the 15s, the 18s that he scores. So we'll see. But I think for the minute, what I am looking at is Cade, Harden, and either Tamani Kamara or Isaiah Joe. I feel as good as Donovan Mitchell has been, Harden's floor just feels a little bit higher with the rebounding, and he's also $800K cheaper. So I can squeeze him in a little bit easier. The other sort of big scorers from the last week, like Desmond Bane, he's only got the 3-game week. Obviously, Luka is the big question there too. I much prefer Cade. I probably would rather have Luka than Harden, but that $5 million difference is a big one, right? And so I think Harden should be okay, should put up some pretty big numbers. Fingers crossed at this point, but I like the way that Cleveland are playing. They've got a huge game against the Knicks. And I don't know, I feel like Harden is the go-to for me this week. I don't know. What do you reckon? Let me know, because I don't know. I'm going to open the floor, see what you reckon. Otherwise, I think who I'm trading at this week, Jamal Murray with the 3-game week. Ant-Man and Minnesota don't play 4 games for another couple of weeks. And then I think, Miles Bridges has got to go. I would much rather, really, really wish I had Mikal Bridges, because I think the 95 or whatever he scored this week would have been a lot more preferable. What was it? 95 for Bridges? 95 for Mikal Bridges versus 3 for Miles. That's a bit of a pain, but still. Anyway, so I think that's where I'm at. Cade, Harden, and either Isaiah Joe or Tamani Kamara. See how we go from there and try to crack back into the top 400, keep moving upwards, and, continue the rise as we head into the final third of the season. But there you go. Awesome. Well, let me know. Hit us up in the DMs, jump in the comments, say good day, tell us what trades you're making. I want to know. I'm fascinated by seeing what we all think heading into the last third of the season. But that's it. We'll be back next week for a very quick hitter NBA Supercoach show. We will also be doing a bit of AFL Supercoach. I'll throw one out hopefully at the end of this week once we get some time. It'll be in the podcast feed, but in terms of the actual video, I think it'll have its own standalone Jim Does SuperCoach channel, so go check that out. Either way, make sure you're following NBA Straya and NFL Straya and Jim Does SuperCoach on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, all Insta, all that stuff. Get around all the shows. Rate, review, star, subscribe as well, please. Be very much appreciated. Otherwise, that's it. Big thanks to Josh De Laurentiis for the intro and outro song. Here's to a big Week 17 of NBA Supercoach. This has been Jim Does SuperCoach. Happy Supercoaching.